before we start insulating, we try to get as much of our ducting into our walls and into our floor system. We try to get our plumbing chases built ahead of time. Any work that we need to do that happens inside these walls, any type of mechanical or electrical or plumbing rough-in, should happen before the insulating starts. With ducting, if you can't put the complete run of ducting in, you can just put a section in that you can tag into later. All you need to know is, say for instance, where your bath fan needs to go or where your HRV inlet needs to go. And what we'll do is just nail a piece of plywood across the stud bay, and that gives us good support for our vapor retarder, and we can cut that vapor retarder around the duct later. With the underfloor plumbing, your options are to leave the sheathing loose, the subfloor sheathing loose to cut into the plumbing chase, or if you can time it, it's even better if you can get all your plumbing in ahead of time. So that's just a matter of coordinating, and every situation's a little different. Main point is try to get as much of your rough-in done before you insulate. And then as a final step, before insulating begins, I personally will typically do a walkthrough of the entire shell, and I'll check everywhere to make sure that I've got corner blocking. So for instance, we can take a look right over here. I've got my gable truss and my wall meeting, and since we're furring out this wall, there's no support right here for my horizontal wall furring, so a nailer needs to go in here. Check places like this right here to make sure that you've got the nailer needed to support your subfloor. A good walkthrough will save a lot of heartache later, because if you're trying to put on the vapor retarder and the furring and all of a sudden there's no support, well then you end up going back in and tearing things apart to put stuff in there. One other thing that I would like to say is you can see here at the top and at the bottom, and this information's in our plans, it's drawn in the details, we have a block between the trusses. This block provides support for the subfloor, and because our shear panel extends up beyond the plane of the subfloor, and it does this as well up at the ceiling level, we've got solid support for our furring and our vapor retarder. That means when we install the vapor retarder on the ceiling and it overlaps with the vapor retarder on the wall, it's fully supported on the back side, and it's clamped by the furring on the front side, which makes for a very airtight joint in the long term. That vapor retarder can't come loose. At the floor level, that vapor retarder needs to glue. You can see it right here. We'll pull up close. I've got a cutaway section here. This is your first run of horizontal furring that goes down on the subfloor. The vapor retarder is glued to the subfloor with Tremco. We don't just glue it to our blocking, it has to go to the subfloor to air seal this section, and then it's clamped down and held in place by our horizontal furring. As far as the insulating goes, we've used both a blown-in cellulose and a blown-in fiberglass. We much prefer the blown-in insulations. Which product we use depends more on cost of shipping and what it takes to get a particular insulation to a particular location and what's available in a given area. I would say blown-in insulations are always going to be a better choice versus bats for a structure like this, because every truss has a lot of intermediate bracing and there's a lot of voids in there if you use bats. If you use a blown-in insulation, that blown-in product fills in really, really well and very consistently, and so you get a lot better performance. In the case of the floor, typically we provide enough insulation when we're using fiberglass. I should make that clear. When we're using fiberglass, we try to provide enough blown-in fiberglass that we can fill the entire floor cavity. I would recommend checking the materials list and the amount of product on hand before you start to make sure there's enough insulation to fill up the subfloor or fill up the underfloor area, as well as dense pack the walls and loose fill the roof. Just do a quick bag count, check the calculations, make sure everything's there as you need it. It wouldn't do to run out and then have to ship more insulation out.